Global Tech, Anthony Savio, the Chief Executive Officer of the Rockfin Group LLC, and of course we have Anil Chowdhury, who will be joining us as well. He is the Associate Administrator of the Office of Planning and Analytics, Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration for the U.S. DOT. Thank you all so much for being with us. Let's give a nice round of applause to them. Please have a seat. Please take your seat. Also, and moderating today, he's right here. If you'd like to introduce yourself, David.
Are we on?
Just hit the button, please.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. My name is David Deng. I'm the Senior Vice President for Digital Transformation at ICF, and it's really my honor today to be invited to moderate this distinguished panel. The panel's title is Innovative Technologies, but we were kidding, so we're just going to talk about AI today, because that's all everyone wants to talk about. I was telling my team the other day that AI is the only capability that I've been delivering for my clients, that what I say in the morning changes in the afternoon. So to that end, I'm really honored to have this distinguished panel to share some of their insights on the state of innovative technologies and AI. And I thought we'd just start off with some quick introductions. Your name, sort of your organization, and I know we had a brief one. Maybe Neil will start off with you, what you're doing today at DOT.
Is till I figure out how to shorten out my title thing. What I'd like to do is really talk about my agency a little bit. It's a very small agency, and you know what? I'll just project. So it's a very small agency, right? But what we do is we manage about, I would say, I had to write it down just to make sure I sort of had it right, we manage about 70% of the pipelines across the United States. So so 70% of the fuel transport that happens in the United States is managed by our organization, right? Along the way, 20% of all freight, about 1 million shipments a day of hazardous material, 40 million containers, 2.3 billion tons of hazardous material. That's what our agency does, and it's about 600 people that do this, right? And we could not do it without the partnerships that we have with our state, our local, our tribal, also with our industry partners. So when and David and his company ICF are great partners of ours. It's all about when we come here. For me, these events are engaging with the community that's going to help us collectively do our mission, right? So in that sense, I'm really happy to be here to talk about some of the challenges we face, because the government doesn't have all the answers, and what we're hoping for is engagement like this will definitely help not only industry understand our perspective related to innovation and technology, but also industry can help channel some of that towards us so that we can be better and more efficient and more productive for the American public. Thank you.
What is the agency?
The Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, PHMSA for short, within Department of Transportation. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Anthony.
Check. So my name is Anthony Savio. I go by Tony. So I opened up my own company, a consulting group, Rockfin. But my start started with military special operations, then Secret Service, and then into the CIA for 10 years, where I was counterterrorism, and then moved into counterintelligence. And right now, what I see that's happening, and what my company focuses on, it's a lot of things dealing with business. We're talking about corporate espionage. We're talking about various activities, red teaming on penetrations. Not just that, and going into what can happen into the private sector with embezzlements, with various activities against political leaders, and also CEOs with disparaging things that come out. And what we're seeing is technology is one step ahead of what we're trying to do. And it's a constant battle. Whatever you see in technology that's happening, you're going to see nefarious activity. They're going to use it. So we have to take good with the bad. And then when I'm talking to other colleagues over here, we have a great battle plan, and the word needs to get out. It takes all of us. Government can't do it alone, and it takes innovation from the private sector, private individuals, consultants to go out there and actually lead the way. It was off.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Andre Yi. I know I was introduced as the CEO of Triblio. That was my last company, which I sold to International Data Group, IDG, which is a global B2B media company, sold out about, at this point, over 3 years ago. It was a Blackstone company, so we grew the business significantly. But I left at the start of this year to start yet another company. Someone said to me, you know, why do you keep doing that? I said, it's a disease and I've yet to find a cure. So I'll keep doing it until, but my new company is called Tiga.ai. And since you want to talk about artificial intelligence, I work with it every day. And what Tiga is we are building an AI assistant for B2B sellers. If you direct sell using email, our AI will help you essentially prospect, it will help you answer questions, all that kind of stuff. So very interested in the conversation today. Thank you for asking me.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is William McBurrow, and I'm the co-founder and chief security officer at MC Global Tech. We are a cybersecurity consulting firm based in DC. We work primarily with small and mid-sized firms in highly regulated industries, healthcare firms, financial services firms, legal firms, government contractors, right? So about 60% of the work that we do is primarily within the defense and industrial base, helping DoD contractors build security compliance programs from the ground up to meet upcoming NIST 800-171 and CMMC requirements. So we do policy development, we do training, we do technology integration, program management, assessment audits, etc. I've been a cybersecurity professor and professional for over 20 years. I rarely interface with a lot of the technologies that we're going to be talking about here today. A lot of my current clients are sort of struggling with how to not just manage AI, but how to control the use of AI within their organizations. So I'm looking forward to the to discussing this with my panelists here today.
Great, thank you, panelists. So let's just stay with you, William. You said in our prep call, AI is already being deployed in your organization, whether you like it or not, whether you're ready or not. Can you share some examples of the ones you mentioned on the prep call?
So we hear a lot about AI, right? Artificial intelligence, right? Allowing technology to make decisions for us that impact our lives and our companies. AI is not the future, right? AI is the present. It's already here, right? We are all using it. If you're not using it personally, your staff is, right? Your contractors are, your partners are, your vendors are, right? And it's just a fact of life today. It's being used for customer engagement. It's being used for, making financial-based decisions, trading, determining your credit worthiness. It's being used in healthcare for, diagnosing, illnesses, right? It's being used by my students. Every week I'm receiving what's clearly AI-generated content for assignments, right? It's being used by my kids in middle and high school. And just the other day, I was working on a document for a project. It took me a few days, and I needed to create a definition of terms. For those of us in the technology space, we automatically assume that folks understand the terms that we use. So, I could have spent a few hours reading through that, document and defining specific terminology that I thought would be useful for the reader. But instead I went to ChatGPT, I copy, pasted, create a definition of terms for this content. 30 seconds later, I had content, right, that I was able to modify. Technology is there to make our work and our lives easier. But again, going back to what I do, I work in spaces where there are laws and there are rules that govern data. How we manage healthcare data, how we manage financial data, how we manage personal identifiable data. So if I or someone on my staff were copying and pasting a customer file into ChatGPT, or a file that included client confidential information, or a file that included intellectual property, that's problematic. We've seen case after case after case of sensitive information being uploaded into these AI-based platforms to make someone's job easier. So as a community, as an industry, we are all having to sort of interface with what do we do with this new AI thing, because it is everywhere.
Thank you. Neil, you've been at the forefront of implementing AI in the government. First at GSA, when you were advising agencies on the best practices. Then you were at the White House, where you worked in the Office of the National Cyber Director, and now, obviously, the executive team at PHMSA aligning strategy with execution. Can you just share for those who might be in public sector and just starting their AI initiatives during some best practices?
So I'm going to be a little careful here, right? Because one of the things you have to do is not get ahead of your bosses, right? That's the best way to keep your job. So you know, I have been, you know, like David said, about 20 years doing things on the innovation front to help my employees and my organizations become more efficient. So in the early 2000s, it was implementing enterprise resource planning systems, the big ERPs, so that we're entering data only once. So that we're not rekeying data over and over again in different things. We could just pull data from one, enter it once and we can work with it. And then somewhere along the way, business intelligence became a fad, and then from there, business analytics became a fad. And as we're progressing, as we got really good at business analytics, right? Then we started to move into, we're doing really good with, this idea of diagnosing where the problems are. How can we get better at predicting where the next set of problems are going to be? And that's really where, we started this idea of, let's start trying out, machine learning, let's start trying out reinforcement learning, all those things. So, for a public sector employee, what I got to say is, especially in highly regulated industries, right, government as a whole is also tightly regulated, is what you have to do is start thinking about business problems. Don't get enamored by the technology, right? The tool is going to change along the way, and maybe your way of working is going to change. But what it is that if you're solving a problem, right, those problem-solving skills haven't changed in the last 100 years. The Plan, Do, Check, Act, the program management, project management principles, internal controls. There's no, accounting. It hasn't changed for 2,000 years, right? So don't get enamored by the tool. Think about what problem you're trying to solve, and then just be open to using different tools. And then if the tool doesn't work, it's okay. You say, at least I tried something and I had some experiential learning. And I'll give a good example of this. I have a young employee the other day in my organization, works public engagement. When we, in my organization, in PHMSA, when we are doing regulation and rulemaking, part of that is we do a lot of outreach. And a big challenge for us is outreach in marginalized and underserved communities, right? Where there are language barriers, there are technology barriers. And what we want to do is, especially if we are talking about things that impact people's lives, we want to be as inclusive as we can in the rulemaking process. So, this person came and said, I would really like to try different tools to say what we can do, because it's a very drawn-out process to translate something from English to, a esoteric foreign language. But in its, like Silver Spring, there's Amharic. A lot of people, but outside of like Silver Spring, there isn't a huge Amharic-speaking community. But when we're doing something in that area, it's critical for us to recognize that we need to engage with people who would understand Amharic better and understand what we're trying to do. But the translation process is very long and drawn out. Can we try different technology tools? And then that process is we're trying out these tools, right, on public information that's already public out there, so it's not like proprietary. But what we're also doing is, at this point, we're doing the validation, where we say, is the translation as robust as if we had a certified translator doing it, somebody who has been translating for a while, understands how to capture nuances in language that aren't clear in a word-for-word translation. You know, so how are we doing that? So we are experimenting. So the young folks, I would say, don't be afraid of experimenting, right? But understand what the purpose of the experimentation is not to, you know, try out a cool toy just for the sake of trying out a cool toy. It's not for self-actualization. It's to solve a business problem that makes your line of business better, more efficient. So, thank you.
Thank you. Tony, you shared your extensive background in national security. In our prep call, you could say that for every positive development in AI, there would be a correlating negative development from the bad actor side. And you shared some stories of things you're seeing both here and abroad. Really scary, almost as scary as that economic outlook, which is kind of like 30 minutes ago. But you want to share some of the stories that what you're seeing, and then maybe ways we can protect ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah, there's AI right here.
No, it's not. It's AI right there.
So, you know, we start talking about all this technology that's coming into effect. And, you know, my time, you know, military special operations taught me how to work within a team and accomplish missions and mission planning. Secret Service taught me that we put our security out there. We do preventive measures that we need to take to solve all the problems that we foresee. And then I moved to the CIA. And then I learned real quick that whatever you put in place, give me time, and I will penetrate it. And I actually want to expand myself, so I actually took a course on hacking. And the first day I entered a room, there was a big TV. And I'm dating myself here, but who saw War Games? And you remember the chess thing when they're playing and then they keep losing and all the bombs going back and forth? That's exactly what they had. And I asked the professor, I was like, what is this? He says, these are real-time attacks that are coming in into the United States. And it looked like War Games. Everything just hitting us. And so when I actually took this course, I wanted to learn a little bit more about the technologies out there and why. Because you have to understand the adversaries and what they're probably going to do to come out with solutions. What I found is there's not a whole lot of solutions, you just got to stay on top of it. When we start looking at AI, we start looking at technology, there's a lot of data that's getting put out there. And then we look at the culture. How much stuff are we putting out there on social media? I can tell you this, you know, working in counterintelligence, I really geared towards that. Because adversaries, people that I want to go up against, people I want to get information, just puts it out there. Now, during the time AI wasn't as prevalent. Imagine now that I could just put a code out there for AI to learn, to gather all this data on a certain person. Then you start going into a situation, now I just have the complete bio of you. I know where you go, I know how you talk. Now I can record things. And one of the biggest fears we have right now is called deepfake. And what that does is mimicking you. I can take pictures and use the AI, I can make that picture talk, move around. I mean, we used to have that funny little thing like Snapchat, we had like the little not moving face right there. Well, it's beyond that now. Then you can mimic voices because I get recordings. And now AI can take all that learning and learn exactly your voice and copy that. And what we're seeing is that's happening out there. And it's happening in the realm of the political realm, where they can create videos of certain people. It happened with Nancy Pelosi, where they actually did it, showing her that she was completely drunk, and it was actually a fake video. You're actually seeing that in corporate espionage. You're actually seeing that in a simple thing as far as ransom. I work internationally a lot, and I get a lot of videos coming in where people are asking, is this, you know, my loved one is they're saying they're captured and everything, and we actually run it through, and it's actually fake. And you also have a lot of stuff going on where You're doing phishing attacks. Imagine phishing attacks before. We used to tell you in cybersecurity and everything, kind of look at the little nuances in there. There may be my name and they added a dot there at the end, you know, and don't click on this link. But now, if I could generate something that looks like exactly how you will write, it's more believable. And what if I put an attachment that has a picture of me and you start hearing? So there's a lot of things that the criminals can use now to go against us. It's going to be harder. These are easy things. And the technology is out there. So whatever we're using as far as gathering PPI, gathering all these data points, they're going to be using to gain that. I remember back in a couple of years back, I gave myself again with China having a breach of PPI into OPM. So now imagine we're able to do this, or we do a malicious attack. We're actually doing data poisoning. So data poisoning is a process to where I put a malicious virus in there to change the data points. So if you're doing political movement or you're a political candidate and you're trying to gather data points on where the state of the area voters are and everything, another entity could pop that into you, so your data points are all off. You can look at this in forecasting for stocks, forecasting for the economy. So there's major effects that other entities, even looking at other state entities, could do to manipulate what we're doing here. It could cause widespread. Another one is you could have AI do multiple attacks. So now, before we had the fear of hackers doing multiple attacks on different systems to overload, to shut it down, AI can do it like this. And now we're going to chaos and turmoil. So there's a lot of things that we have to be aware of. And yes, when we talk, I'm bringing the doom and gloom to this, because that's my business. Corporate espionage, threat analysis, risk mitigations, working with these wonderful, smarter people than I am to say, okay, listen, let's shore up some of these things. So I say this with, with a warning out there. As this technology grows, understand that whatever you're doing for your convenience could be used against you. And sometimes you gotta be careful. And honestly, you gotta be careful what your kids post out there too. So you gotta monitor these things. And it's easy to gather this data. Is that enough here?
And on the protection side, like what can we do to protect ourselves? How did you put all that out there?
Yeah. Well, key things you gotta do. One, on the social media side, you gotta protect your privacy. It's great to snap all your shots out there of where you're going, what you're doing, of your house and different things. Protect that. You don't need to do that as much. Second to that, you got to be wary. When you get these phishing attacks that are coming in, make sure that you're verifying things. It's kind of hard now because you got phone calls or stuff like that. Someone calling you, go ahead and give the person the call that supposedly is that person. Don't take everything for face value anymore. Even when you do a Zoom, I mean, that could be, also utilized with AI. One thing that I tell a lot of people is whatever network you're using, have a strong security team that's doing red teaming on that to go through to see what vulnerabilities are there and understand vulnerabilities. You may not be able to take care of that now, but you have to understand vulnerabilities and understand that someone's going to do something that's going to happen here. And then what am I going to do in the event that we catch this and how we're going to fix this right away? So it's being proactive, it's not relaxing on this, and it's understanding how fast the technology is moving and how fast you have to be ahead of that. So cybersecurity is something that is not going to go away. I think the business cybersecurity is going to continuously increase, and that's something that is good. I say for people in the security field like myself, it's fantastic. On the consumer side, it's very bad.
Thank you. William, when we were prepping, you're like, why all the gloom and doom? Like, AI's got some positive things going on too. Like how you mentioned some ways that how AI can positively impact an organization and company. You want to share some of those?
Sure,
Sorry,
yeah.
Will, Andre.
Actually, William made a really good point earlier, which is you're already using AI. So the first thing is You use applications, you use QuickBooks, all these applications, AI has been in use for years.
Yep.
So, that's really an important thing to understand. What's changed? Well, in the last year, what's changed is the emergence of generative AI, which is a different kind of AI, because now it can actually converse, right? It has the mastery of language. It has some ability, I would say, to reason and look for patterns in speech, and it's very sophisticated. In fact, Anil made the point about translation. One of the things I in my past done a lot of translation type related work. This has completely changed it over the last 2 or 3 years. This emergence of generative AI, they're not doing word by word or phrase by phrase translation. They actually know the construct of the language and that kind of thing. Now, the potential of this is huge, right? And the reason I make that point is because we spent a lot of time on this panel talking about the risks. And I'm actually coming from the other side. And in fact, I usually, I try to be a loud voice on the other side, which is experiment with this technology, use it, because this is game-changing, right? I'm doing this startup because I believe that AI, generative AI, is game-changing in the world of selling, right? And being able to help companies now scale their businesses. It used to be if you want to scale your business, you have to hire a lot of salespeople. My goal is that you can run your company with 3 salespeople and have them perform like 30, 40 salespeople, right? So that's what I think about. And the reason I make this point is, to me, sometimes, like, all these risks are real. Tony's an expert, he's right. And I've had a background, previously I was CEO of a security company, so I still have an interest in that. But I do feel at times it's a little bit like being in the horse and buggy era, and someone says, hey, there's this thing called the car. You should really try it out. And we're like, yeah, but let's start by talking about seat belts and airbags. That's not what it feels like to me, right? There are dangers for sure, but don't miss the potential. ChatGPT is just a start. ChatGPT to me is a general purpose tool, and there are a lot of risks related to that William and others have brought up, which is, you have to be able to sort of safeguard your employees from putting in proprietary information. All that is true. I think what you're going to see, so to me, when I think of ChatGPT, I think of it like Word or Excel spreadsheet. It's a general purpose tool. I can use Excel to create a shopping list and my travel plans. I can use Excel to do financial planning. That's how varied, the uses. I think what you're going to see is the emergence of a new sort of generation of tools that I would say, broadly speaking, are purpose-built. So I'm building one for B2B selling. You'll see people building purpose-built AI platforms for contract management. Some will do it for different kinds of business problems. And Anil was right earlier when he said focus on the business problem. That's where I would start. I would focus on the business problem, and then look, there are plenty of technology vendors out there, and I would just start by experimenting, exploring. I think the biggest challenge most companies have or organizations have today, because I've talked to a lot of them, they're getting a lot of pressure from their boards, from their investors, from private equity, their private equity-owned company, from the VCs. Every time you walk in a board meeting for the last 6 to 9 months, someone on the board is saying, "What are you doing about AI? How can you make AI? How can you use AI to make your business more efficient?" And the #1 challenge in talking to executives is they don't know where to start. Right? Beyond ChatGPT, everyone knows ChatGPT, but beyond that, what else are you doing? So, look at different parts of your business. I think, the reason I focus on sales is because I view B2B selling, that's one of the most inefficient parts of the business. Right? If you take a business that's going from 1 million to 100 million in revenue, I guarantee you the growth in revenue is highly correlated to the growth in the sales team. Right? So that's the problem I'm trying to solve for. But there are other problems out there, other problems of efficiency. It might be, you have a marketing organization and they have trouble creating good content. That's an area. There are tools out there like Lavender and other tools that can help you write content and that kind of thing. So my encouragement is not that the caution that you hear from Tony and others, I think are valid, but most of us, unless you work for an intelligence agency or very sensitive information, if you're just running a business, then I would encourage you to really explore, use, try. Not everything's going to work out, but I think this is, we're in an era where the game is changing. It's kind of like, you talk about dating yourself. Kind of like get back to the emergence of the web and the internet, right? It was like there were some companies that would jump in right away, and those companies, I'm not saying all of them succeeded, but a lot of those companies transformed the way business is done, right? Because with the web, you could now sell to someone halfway across the world, without setting up a store. That's how game-changing I think it is for our businesses, and so explore and use is what I would encourage.
Thank you. Got some few more questions, but I was going to open up to the crowd. If anybody has any questions in front?
So,
Andre.
I am a technology. I have a technology company, SAP platform, and the problem that you describe, we're living it every day. How do we scale our company to the next level to be able to reach the consumer, right? And so there are products out there that we're using, ZoomInfo, HubSpot, and all the ones that help generate content. What I want to understand is I want to dig a little deeper into how you see the problem from the standpoint of both your audience are people like me who have technology companies, and there's service-oriented companies that may be selling to the government. Dig a little deeper in terms of
What we do, or our point of view.
And your point of view.
Yeah, so AI has been around. There are also a lot of applications out there like HubSpot and other applications. And not all of them compete with us. In fact, most of them don't. The one thing that's different and where I see the opportunity and why is that with generative AI, you can legitimately replicate human function. You can augment human function. You can have truly an assistant. That's why the way I described it, I didn't describe it as an application. I described it as an assistant or a co-pilot, if you want to think of it. That's a very popular phrase nowadays. But that you have an opportunity to replicate human function. So, for instance, the way I look at selling, since you brought that up, is a lot of outbound prospecting, for instance, is people send templated emails, right? Dear, what's your name? Ron. Dear Ron. Yeah, exactly. That's what people do. And what I can tell you, in the last 3 to 4 months, I've spoken to over 30 sales and marketing execs, and as well as practitioners, and all of them are telling me that's hit a wall. In fact, it hit a wall like 3 or 4 years ago. And so now, what's interesting is there are still ways to prospect that actually work. How is it done? You take a top salesperson, you know what they do? They research. They find out about Ron. They find out things that Ron likes. Maybe you post on LinkedIn, articles on leadership, right? Maybe you are on a podcast. If I was a salesperson, I'm not talking AI, just a human salesperson doing a good job, I would figure that out, and then I would write a very pointed email and say, Ron, I listened to your podcast on leadership. I love that.
I get 10 of those emails.
but I can actually quote something that you wrote, you actually wrote. And then I can, and then I introduce myself. Maybe not all of them will work, and then I try to connect with you socially. I connect on LinkedIn. If I know you're going to an event, I try to connect with you. That's what a human does. And then they try to have meaningful, insightful conversations.
And you build technology that.
Yeah. So we're trying to replicate that. And so what's the problem with that? The problem is that there's this account executive for a company called Pendo. She said to me, that's what I do. I get 300 name accounts from marketing. I pare it down to 30. And then I do what I just explained, that's what she does. The problem is that this method still works, but it's very labor intensive, right? It still works because it's personal, right? It's personal, and so that's essentially what we're trying to do, is we are augmenting and replicating human function.
You would have to excellent.
So I'll jump in just to add to what you talked about, right? I've been in public service for a little over 30 years, right? And I grew up as, I started my journey in the Army as like an enlisted soldier, and I'm where I am, right? And along the way, it's this whole idea of karma, you want to try to do good, right? And what I'll run into, and I want to be gracious with my time, I want to be respectful for especially small businesses. My wife also runs a small business, trying to be respectful to the small business owner who's, the engine of innovation in America. So, traditionally what I'll find is somebody will, grab me like probably right after this event, right? And then they'll be like a junior salesperson or like a BD person. And the first question they'll sort of ask me is, tell me about your business problem. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not here to work for you. You tell me about my business problem and how you're going to solve it. So, but that's very labor intensive, right? And, this idea about personalizing the human connection is hard. And it's, that's why you're hired, your salespeople cost a lot of money, right? And they have to be very targeted in who they prospect. So, that's where, when we talk about innovation and technology, right? It's using something like ChatGPT to say, hey, pull me off a briefing deck for Neil so that I know exactly from Neil's public, all his public presence, what he has done, whatever projects he has worked on, and then what interests him, pull me off a deck that is personalized to him. And then say, Neil, I understand your organization has this problem. This is how I propose my organization is going to solve it for you. And then all of a sudden, there's time on my calendar. But for somebody to come up to me and say, hey, tell me about your business problem, I'm like, dude, did you even go to my website? Right? So that's where, when we talk about working with government, it's really about how are you leveraging technology to make most use. Because for a government employee, our most valuable commodity, our most valuable resource is our time on our calendar. That's the most valuable resource we have. We have to be very judicious about it, right? And it's not because, we're difficult or we're more important than you, right? It's just that there's so many hours in the day. There are only so many things that we can do. And, I do try, I'm here, right? I'm carving time out to come here to talk to my industry partners because it's something I care deeply about, right? But then how do we make this engagement meaningful? And that's what also I'm here to talk about, right? Is that if you come up to me and say, tell me about your business problem, I'm like, I love chit-chat, you're a great person, we'll have some chit-chat, but then you'll go back to your boss and say, I talked to Neil, and he'll be like, okay, when's the follow-up, where's the thing? And then all of a sudden I'll get 40 emails in a row that says, when can we meet, what can we do, and then they start going in my spam folder, right? So it's like, so that's really what it boils down to. And then for the younger folks in the room, it's really about, sometimes I'll sit down and I'll make time because I was young and a lot of folks mentored me along the way. I'm not here other than being on the shoulders of giants, right? And then they'll come in, they'll sit in, and they'll come in, and then they'll be distracted by their phone, and they'll be distracted by 17 other things. And I'm like, for that moment in time, do you have the self-discipline to just disconnect for 30 minutes that you're spending with me? And I'm saying, as a young, as somebody young in this room, if you learn that skill, I guarantee you, you'll be successful regardless of what technology you have.
Is your message to us? You're saying a lot.
Stay on the phone.
There's a lot. Are you validating what Andre is saying?
Absolutely.
If he actually could solve the problem the way he solved it?
Well, he can solve your problem. He can't solve mine. Right?
But if he can he can do the outreach better to you. 'Cause
Yeah.
I don't even want to sell you something.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, exactly. So it's a tool, right? Like Andre is working on a tool, right? Now, how much that tool, you'll have to do your own internal ROI calculation, right? On what that tool means, how much it costs, what the prospecting funnel looks like past that, right? But yes, if it's a tool that can help you personalize, knowing that we have waves and waves of information, right? The whole idea, like I tell my kids, the purpose of a resume is not to get a job. The purpose of a resume is to get an interview, right? The purpose of the interview is to get a job. Same thing here. The purpose of, that initial engagement, that prospect, is to get time on the calendar to make the sale, right? To make the sales pitch. The initial contact isn't to make a sales pitch. The initial contact is to get on somebody's calendar to make a sales pitch. So, maybe he has a tool that works well, I don't know, right? But what I'll say is innovation, you can still look at it, right? And then you may make a business decision that it doesn't work. Maybe you're in such a narrow market where there are only 2 government agencies and 3 private sector agencies, and everybody knows everybody. You don't need to use ChatGPT because you know everybody in that space.
I'm using it today. I'm already past that.
So yes, there are tools out there, but once again, it goes back to what's the purpose of the tool, right? If you're using the tool just for using the tool's sake, you won't get anywhere. But if you're using the tool to get better at prospecting, leveraging artificial intelligence, that's something to consider. Similar with me, where I look at tools like artificial intelligence and say, how do they help me do my job better, right? So it's not just a tool. We have, for like me personally, people come and say, why aren't you using ChatGPT? And for me, I say, at this point in time, I don't see value in ChatGPT until the market matures a little bit for my function, because it's a highly regulated function, right? I can't have an ad hoc response, right? I can't use ChatGPT to sort of like draft a comment for a congressional inquiry. It's not going to happen, So things like that, it's where we're thinking, but there are tools out there, and this idea about encouraging people going back to the business problem, and for the younger folks, learning how to disconnect so that you can actually humanize, because that's where we're going back in a full circle, is that how do we be humans again, right? Which is back to Andre's point. Thank you.
Will, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think, so as a security professional for over 20 years, I long ago learned that telling people no is never the answer, right? Don't go there, don't do that. As a cyber risk advisor, my job is to help you do the things you want to do, but do it more securely, right? I think, just a quick point on the status of where tools like ChatGPT are. I was listening to a podcast with Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, and his goal within 5 to 10 years is to create artificial general intelligence. And his definition of that is to create AI that is as smart as a human being, right? Now, we already know that it can process a lot of data, it can do a lot of analytics, but where are we going with this? Let me give you one example. Has anyone in here heard of this company called Zoom? Ever heard of Zoom? Right? Now, we've come out of the pandemic where Zoom is a verb now, right? So how many of you have read the terms and conditions of Zoom? How many of you have read the terms and conditions of any platform that we are all using, right? But in March of this year, Zoom made a change to their T&C that said that the company had the right to use all of the audio, video, and chat input to train its AI engine, right? All of the content that we input into the platform, they had the right to take that data and use it to train its AI engine. Now, there's a lot of controversy. They recently came out in sort of August and clarified that no. They're not saying that they would do any of this without consent. right? So I'm a huge proponent of leveraging innovation, leveraging technology. I would never say don't do that. You know, I'm part of a think tank that's focused on working with technology vendors that with a goal of creating a trusted AI model. And part of that trust is to ensure that we're respecting security, we're respecting privacy, we're respecting intellectual property rights, we are conscious of biases within these tools, but also more importantly, we are being transparent, right? Part of my concern is we are approaching a time when you will not know whether the person you're engaging is an actual person or it's AI, right? You go to the doctor to get diagnosed. You go to the bank to get a loan. You go to an insurance company to, get a policy. And those, decisions that are very impactful for your business and your life are going to be made by technology. You have no idea that there's someone there who is actually reviewing that work.
Yeah. Wait, I'd like to take the discussion kind of a little more grounded in something that many of us in the audience are dealing with every day. And that is, we all realize that we operate in a world that is a lot more risky from a security perspective. And yet, some of us are putting things in place to take preventative measures. We're doing vulnerability scans. We're being able to look at, basic hygiene and putting those things in place. The problem that a lot of us face, and I know, I have a product in the security area, so I see a lot of customers. A lot of them are just overwhelmed by data. You're doing a scan, and you get so many positives and so many false positives that you don't even know where to, and we're security people. So we could say, yeah, this is something you need to look at. But the average person who owns a business, they can't make heads or tails out of it. So how can AI actually, when are we going to see that? When are we going to see that breakthrough? Because
There are people working on that.
Oh, that needs to be worked.
No, I just met with a startup founder. He is trying to do what I'm doing, which is replicating human function, but in the world of security, right? So essentially replicating functions in the SOC. I'm sure.
So I think that there are a number of tools, right? Like Andre said, that are focused on this area. Part of the real challenge we have is that a lot of the buzz around AI, who's really doing AI, right? Now everybody's saying that they're doing AI, but again, in the security space, we've been working with a number of platforms that have been leveraging heuristics, leveraging machine learning, leveraging artificial intelligence to solve exactly that problem. Because the data and the data points are increasing exponentially, right? Everything we do now is creating data points, right? So that is a problem that does need to be solved. I think we start working on it.
I would say this, so in Rockfin Group, we have our partner company, we actually developed a SOC for providing that to mid-size. Because we understand mid-size companies don't have the funding to get a chief security officer strictly for that, to have a whole team. And this is a space that we are looking at that is very vulnerable, to be able to utilize AI and the capability of identifying, getting all these data points to identify things. But I also want to talk a little bit about what you guys are talking about, business development. I do business development, and going back to my time in the agency, we did exactly what AI is doing now. We had analyst teams. So what we did was data mine on certain people, see how we can have a connection with them, data mining on their political leanings, different things like that. And then what that goes is to someone such as myself. I get briefed on exactly what his likes, dislikes are, where he wants to be at, and I create a persona to be exactly somebody that can connect with him. To actually, what we did was get the next meeting. Can't be too hard on that because it comes out creepy, So just enough that you can get the next meeting. So I would say, when we started utilizing AI in the business realm, we gather all these data points of potential clients that you want to meet. But one good thing you could do is you can look at your business development team and who fits the best profile to match up to that point where you are going to send them to a conference and there it goes, AI. You send them to a conference where they're going to have that chance encounter and they can connect on something. Because you can utilize AI in the business realm where you can actually come out with something tangible where I can connect with something on a human factor and then take that in the positive realm. So it's tried and true. I mean, it's used in the government. I use it myself in the business development realm, working with my teams on how we connect with certain people. Yes, do I put business development personnel at conferences because I know certain people are going to be there and I know their background, I know their likes, I know their dislikes, I know that what soccer games you like to go to. I'll tell you this, I know too much about cricket than I ever want to know. It was only because of having a similar like. So you can really develop AI into the sense to enhance my business development team. So they're just not going out there cold calling. They're just not sending out emails. They're actually getting in front of the person and building a rapport, the likability aspect to get the second meeting. And once you get the second meeting, then it just goes from there.
I think we have time for one more question over here.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Ben Bowles with MindPedal Software Solutions. I recently had the privilege of attending a national security conversation around AI, so I find this really, really interesting. I mean, AI has been in existence for at least 50 years, where we developed a chatbot at Lawrence Lovewood Lab. I'm sure you all know that. But in America, AI is always, and the direction we're moving is purpose-built AI, as you've spoken about, whereas other countries have a different focus. China's looking at leap ahead AI, for example. And what makes me think, and this is more for Neil, what makes me worried about AI is in the government space, AI is built to generate outcomes. And outcomes touch individuals, organizations, it's real stuff, right? So how do you go about making sure there's resiliency in the AI supply chain?
So that's a very complicated issue that we can't, and I'm not trying to be glib about it, right? It's a very complicated issue, right? But one of the things that you have to realize, right, as an AI practitioner, AI goes all the way, from robotic process automation to generative AI. Right?
LLMs to...
Yeah, like for me, the most value right now in my workday, right, is robotic process automation, is the automated handling of forms from one mailbox to another. You're like, oh my God, that's so simple, But that's like the bane of my existence, right, is to find out exactly where a piece of paper is in the organization, right? So just, hear me out on this for a second, because I know you're trying to get me to say something provocative, right? So, in those terms, it's a mature technology, and we do have a good risk management strategy, right? But in terms of some other things where, at least for me, I don't have a good risk management strategy, I'm not going to be at the forefront of innovation. I'm going to recognize that there's innovation. I'm going to collaborate with my industry partners. I'm going to go to industry events to try to learn from them, right? But I'm not going to be at the forefront of innovation. Just because I have a mandate of public service, right? I don't have a mandate for profit. I don't have other mandates that other folks do or other nation states do, right? I have a mandate to serve the American public in a safe, secure way that best serves their needs. So how do I do that? And sometimes that just means being aware of innovation without adopting that particular innovation till the market matures. Thank you.
I think we're at time. This has been a great panel. I'll give them a round of applause. Let's give Neil 5 minutes.